In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.
Yeah, people find it intimidating to, they read it like a book, and it is intimidating. But when especially today's technology, the age of technology, just getting little clips here and there that you can plug into your situation, and man, it's those little nuggets have helped me through everything I've been through, and
like
I know they're
roadmap.
Yeah, exactly.
But if both of us, with our pasts and mistakes that we made, had both of our eyes not been opened and our past lives been healed in the areas that we, both screwed up in, our marriage, nothing would have changed had we gotten married,
Right.
because it isn't the person that you're marrying per se, because he could have married me and I could have still been screwed up. And
Vice versa.
Yeah. And so it's like we both know that had we not come out of the darkness into, his light and gone through healing processes, and for God to restore our minds, our thinking, and I'll just be honest. Like I said, there's my kids know all of this. My ex-husband and I were friends. I was raised in a Christian home. I knew what was right and wrong. I had committed adultery, and again, it started up here. My thoughts were messed up for years before I actually committed the act. And I never thought it was wrong. The thoughts. Committing the adultery I did, but when all of a sudden it just happened. And the devil's really sly and good and subtle, because it wasn't like, oh, gee, you plan all of this. It just like, boom, it just happened out of nowhere. And when God opened my eyes to what I did, again, he didn't come at me with this sledgehammer going, Julie, you are the worst person in the world. Look what you did. I am so disappointed in you, like we think God is doing.
Right. That's
Yeah. Oh,
that's what the world
it's
teaches
huge.
us.
Yes. When he opened my eyes, and I knew my husband and I had gotten back together, kind of, and I was living there, and then I moved out again. Well, anyway, for some reason I knew I needed my Bible, and I found this book on our dining room table. Don't even ask me where it came from, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was all about marriage and how women should be and how God, wants a man and a woman and their relationship to be. And I knew down deep that when I moved into my apartment, that all hell was going to break loose. And you would think that would scare me almost, but it didn't. It was just the weirdest feeling. But anyway, took both of those, the Bible, the book, and God just slowly worked on me as I lived there. And I remember the day where the veil came off of my eyes, and I saw what I did, committing adultery, and I could not believe what I did. I was blown away. I felt so grieved and sad, but it wasn't, whenever God, that's the one thing we always, and I still have to remember this, I have to remind myself, when God convicts us, it's truly God. It is never condemnation and smashing you down into the ground. It's this deep sadness that just like, oh, Lord, I'm so sorry. And oh my gosh, you think of the people that you hurt and what you did. And so there was this process that I went through where, it was hell on earth for me. And God was the only one to get me through. I had to write down scripture verses and put them on 3x5 cards and carry them. I was a dental assistant at that time. And I would put them in my scrub pockets, because if I didn't, I knew I couldn't get through the day. I was so broken. And I was at a point in my life that, if you know me, you know, it's like, don't tell me I can't do something.
No.
I can do it. I'm strong.
I am woman.
A lot of pioneer spirit there. Yes.
But really, for the first time in my life, I was just at a point I had never been at before, which I needed to be at. I needed to be there for God to be able to just have his way in me. And anyway, so that went on for a little bit, and then there was one night in my apartment where I was all of a sudden this, I guess you could call it anxiety. I've never had a problem with anxiety, but I would have to say during that period of time, I guess you would say I would come up with this anxiety. I started throwing myself on my bed. I was crying so hard, and praying, reading scripture wasn't doing anything from me, and I was just crying out to the Lord, going, God, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And the only thing that made sense to me was go to your parents' house. And that was the last thing that I really ever wanted to do, was go to my parents' house, because there were issues there. But God is so good at using things that you don't want to do or you don't want to deal with. He'll get you there somehow. And so I just let that feeling go, and it kept going, and I was just sobbing. And finally, because I got to a point where I didn't know what to do, I got in my car and I drove to my parents' house. I sat at the kitchen table with them. They were eating dinner, and I was crying, and my dad just said, Julie, are you okay? And I went, can we just pray? And I stood up, they put their arms around me, and as soon as we started praying, that feeling, the anxiety, the fear, the sadness, it was gone in a heartbeat. God knew exactly. He knew exactly. And he uses the simplest things. And so anyway, I don't really remember where I was going with that. But it was just, God told me to move back into my parents' house, which I did. And without him, I don't even know where I would be. But I know that we wouldn't be. And Randy is my best friend. I've never had a best friend in a man and a husband. And but so you can.
No, we talk about that quite often. Just this morning about how important that is to have not only like your spouse, or not only love your spouse, right, but like your spouse, and that's something that through trials and tribulations you learn. I got married very young the first time, and it's like you're entering into uncharted territory. You don't know. You don't get taught, and I wouldn't say that, you go into it and you look at it and you say, well, I've never done this before. I've never had kids before. And whatever your worldview is at the time, is how you manage that marriage. Yeah. And, you know, I made some dreadful mistakes, but there again, you know, I mean, he is the God of many, many chances. And
Well, when you start those relationships like that, beginning marriage, it's like a whole new world gets opened up to you because
oh, yeah.
she was raised a whole lot different than I was. And she was a city girl. I was a rural boy.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody is brought up in the same. So, I mean, there's a lot of compromise and learning, like you said. I mean, every day you're learning from one another, even after 52 years. Am I still learning? Yes, sir.
You better be. You know, I think I put that down there, you know, that every day, if it isn't, it should be a day in the classroom.
Well, I think going back to your first reference point, you read the first part of it, but I think the last part of it to me was kind of where a lot of it started to really make sense for me is when you have faith first, then family. And firefighting must be somewhere down the road on that. But and it took me a long time, believe me, to figure that out. Because at one point in my career as a firefighter, I thought I had lost that part of it for me, the faith part. And I knew I wasn't doing very well at home. But then the nature of the beast with the fireman, I think, is just like Ronald said, once a fireman, always a fireman. And when I watched that movie, at first I didn't get it. And it's like, oh, my, wow, that was me. You know, you get so committed. The loyalty part, the commitment part, the dedication can get in the way of everything else if you're not really careful. And that's, I think, where the faith part is so important. And as I retired and started helping teach classes afterwards, and really that's when I first really realized the importance of that. And when you start mentioning that, you find out that all those guys you thought must be heathens are coming to you. It's like, yeah, go Lord. You know, and that's the thing that I found since retiring. I would say it's a big majority of firefighters, first responders in general, are faith people. They just maybe haven't gotten as deep as what they had. Just like me, I thought, there's no way he can forgive me for how I've talked after calls, whatever I've done like that. And certainly my home life was a reflection of that too. But getting back into that was everything. So when you guys were talking, it's like, yeah, that's what's really, really important. And I loved how when you sent this to me, that faith, family, and then everything else.
Well, I tell you, it's one of those things that I've talked to several peers in the fire service, you know, and especially in the volunteer service or a paid-on-call service, that they have such a time getting people to come back and to be volunteers. And I said, you know, for many, many years, we've taught so much on family. I said, they were listening to what we said. Family's very important now, you know, where there again, I tell the story about I sacrificed my family on the altar of the fire service.
Right. As many do
as
and
many
have.
do, because of the peers I surrounded myself with, that you start counting on their opinions more than you do on what your family's given you. And, you know, yeah, it was, there again, I learned from my mistakes. You know, it was a long fought battle, you know, but there again, I said, you know, it took me 45 years to become an adult, and but better late than never, I like to say, you know. I mean, and what remaining years I have left, we've both made that our promise, that we're going to do whatever we can to make the best and to pass on what we've learned. So
it's key what you just said. You sacrificed your family on the altar of the fire service. And how many people right now are doing exactly the same thing, sacrificing their families on the altar of service? whether it's law enforcement, firefighter, whatever it might be. I went through a season and realized I was sacrificing my family on the altar of Christian service. And it sent shockwaves through me. Now, the two of you have been pretty emotional through this whole segment, teary-eyed, choked up. How do you maintain a sensitive heart and not, because obviously, and I say this just because it needs to be said, you take a guy like you who's battle-hardened, seasoned vet, obviously a career in fire service. It's not like you sat around and did nothing your whole career. You engaged the enemy on more than one occasion, and it goes without saying. I mean, I know Julie, and I can say this with confidence that, you've been to ugly, dark places in your life. And here the two of you sit with this glow and this smile and teary-eyed, and it's like, how do you maintain that? What do you do to keep that? Because there are so many folks who withdraw and become dead, cold. What's the secret? What do we tell people?
Keep getting up. Get knocked down, keep getting up. And know that you're not in the battle by yourself. That's where I think the evil one definitely tries to isolate. It's only you. This is your battle. You're on your own.
Right.
You can never tell somebody this that you did,
right?
Because then that's it.
It's
they'll
the
hate you.
unforgivable.
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah. And nothing is.
No.
Well, and what you said, Julie, is that it's when God's involved, there's not condemnation, there's conviction. There's a difference where, you realize that, oh my goodness, what am I doing? I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't want to live this life anymore, but I don't know how to recover out of it. I don't know what to do about it. And rather than God beating you down and holding you down because you're worthless, I see him coming along and lifting you up and saying, listen, I'll help you, but you have to appropriate. I mean, when we talk about having faith, we talk about knowing your priorities, keeping them in balance. A lot of folks, they don't even understand faith. And
Even those that are going to church.
even those that are going to church, even pastors in the pulpit, I have found, and I've been doing, I've been in the ministry for 30 years, and I can't believe it. I don't know how it's happened, but I don't gel very well with all pastors and all ministers. I just don't. And I love the fact that, your balance and your priorities. So for those who are listening and are saying, I'm tired of feeling dead, I'm tired of feeling hopeless, I'm tired of feeling trapped, I want zest for life, I want to enjoy my life, or maybe they're not even aware that they're sacrificing everything on the altar of service. What we're suggesting is, as points of reference, faith has to be your priority. You need to understand that. It can help you. Totally can help you. Your family comes second, and your family would be your spouse, your significant other. And there are people who aren't married who have committed themselves to somebody, and it's like, hey, I get that. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about your significant other. Then there are your children, and somewhere in there, as Chief said, comes the fire service or comes your job. And your job demands so much of you. But I have learned something, and only because now I'm on the 6th floor of life, is that people don't give a royal rip. They will discard you. They will get rid of you. And if you're dead and gone, your job is already posted. And it's like, you better stop and take a clue. And I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, is that, listen, your life is going by. Whether you're happy or not, your life is going by. Whether you're fulfilled or not, your life is being spent and going by. You are responsible to fix it and change it. No one else is going to do it for you. Right. You want to be miserable, you could stay miserable your whole life. You want, and you mentioned adultery, and I thought it might be good just to comment on that. It's like, what the heck does adultery mean? Well, it means relations outside of the covenant of marriage. Yep. I hate to say it, but that is in the Bible. I didn't put it there.
And it's not only physical relations.
Oh, no.
It can be a relationship with My mistress, the fire service. Wow. Yeah. And, you know, and you look at that and you say, well, it's no different. You know, when your family wants to be number one, or, you know, and you put something else or somebody else or some other agency or organization or idea as number one before them, it's not going to work out.
And anything, you know, I mean, it could be anything. And there are people who have mistresses that are called education or achievements or accomplishments. And, you know, and money is a big one. Money is a monster. Money is a wonderful servant, but a terrible boss.
Terrible master.
It's a terrible master. And we're just looking at these points of reference because it's just practical stuff that people need to hear. You know, and if you don't get this thing right now, you do have another chance. However, God may give you multiple chances, but your significant other may say, I'm done.
That's it.
I'm done and I've had it.
That's right.
And we're through. That's a sad, terrible place to be, but it happens all the time. And what's even more sad is the first responder who had said to me, the spouse or the significant other, you know, I'm always on the search for a future ex-wife. I'm like, I'm looking for a future ex-wife. What is that? That just blew my mind when he said that to me.
But that's what our society and culture has dictated to us.
Sure.
What is it, 50% failure?
Yeah.
And that's probably on the conservative side.
Yes.
Yeah, that could very well be because it's so acceptable anymore, which is wrong.
It is wrong. And the children are not, I mean, they are victims. And I know we justify it and we say, they're resilient, they'll be fine. Besides, they'll have 2 Christmases and they'll have 2. It's like, really? Really? So it is in our best interest to try to get this thing right and learn from others, such as yourself. You know, we talked about managing your thought life. And I don't know how to emphasize this strongly enough, but your life, my life, our life tends to go in the direction of our most dominant thoughts. It's the thoughts that you allow to stay up here. And, you know, a thought comes, it doesn't mean you have to let it stay.
Right, exactly. Because thoughts are going to come.
Yes,
I don't
they
care
are.
who you are. Doesn't matter. That little thought that comes out of nowhere. What?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
It's so amazing. My wife and I sometimes, we carry this through the day. It's like, she'll say, well, I thought you were mad at me. And I'll say, well, I thought you were mad at me. Right. Well, you said this. Well, you said that. And I'm like, wait, what? You're just like, what the heck happened here?
Yeah.
And
It's like you were listening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You mentioned something about scriptures on an index card. And I'm wondering, so is it possible for people, once they realize that, wait a minute, maybe my mind's a magical place, but sometimes that magic is very dark magic. And it's like, if the thoughts that are going on up here aren't right, how do I change that? Am I a victim of my thoughts, or can I
No.
can I get proactive?
Yes, you can.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, how do I say this? It's like, for me, I don't ever want the title of counselor, because the world has turned, I know so many people that have been going to counseling for years. Years. And they never really get out of where they're at. No, but I'm going to a counselor. Are they better? Yeah. But they still struggle with the same things.
Well, remember, a healed patient is not a return customer.
No, and I do think that there is a lot of truth in that. But when the Lord heals and gets you, that's why with, you know, doing any kind of deep healing, all of us have hurts and wounds, you know, things done by our parents that they didn't even know, things that have been passed down from generation to generation, which in my family, there was adultery. And I remember saying, I will never do that. I will never do that. What did I end up doing? So, you know, there is that cutting off, that, you know, all of that. But, you know, another really big thing that the Lord has taught me was that you cannot have secrets in your life. You cannot have secrets from your husband, unless, of course, it's a surprise birthday party or something like that. But no, you can't have secrets, because secrets will destroy you.
Dispatch from Route 7 Command.
Man, go ahead.
Need a chaplain at this location?
10-4. Attention 3392. 3392, you're needed at the 8000 block of Route 7, multiple vehicle accident. Please acknowledge.
3392 is en route, 8000 block, Route 7.
10-4.
In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God Himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.